you for joining us, and thank you for joining my father. And this is very exciting opportunity for me because in the past, the one live session has been pretty much sort of dominated by my team and me. Okay, but I thought, on Father's Day, the idea came to me to honor my father, to honor my grandfather, who have both inspired me with their resilience in business. So I'm very, very, very happy to have my dad with me today. So some of you may know I started One Inspiration in 2003. So that was 17 years ago. And through the 17 years of journey, it has its ups and downs. I started One during just before the SARS pandemic hit us. And so 2 days after I started, my dad gave me the book, Dummy's Guide to Business Planning. And I was not trained in business. I'm trained in psychology. So I thought, okay, Dad, what are you saying? Are you saying that I'm a dummy, or are you saying that I really need to plan my business? And he just smart and passed me the book and said, read it, right? So one thing I know about my dad is he teaches by giving me books to read. At 14, Dad, you gave me Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. At 14, that was my birthday present, So anyway, I'm going to ask my dad to introduce himself while I go into Facebook Live, okay? Yep.
Good morning, friends and colleagues. It's so good to have the chance to use this platform to reach out to you, and I thank Wendy and the team for giving me the opportunity to come back. And I saw the name list of those who are on now. Many of them are my friends, either from business or from church, and even as far away as San Francisco, I have Harry. But I also have my friend Peter Purushotma, who's an old friend from back in the early 70s. Welcome, Peter. And I really think this is an opportunity to look back and see how my dad, myself, managed to overcome crisis. I was reading a book way back in 1977 by J. Paul Getty. It's called How to Be Rich. And I read it because it says how to be rich. I was then running my father's business with him. And we were meeting a lot of challenges. But the most interesting thing is Paul Getty said in his book that crisis, setbacks, obstacles, these will be met by any executive in the course of his career. The measure of a man in such circumstances is not only how he copes with adversity, but also how he turns it to his advantage. Well, that was 1977 when I first read it. And Paul Getty was the richest man in the world in 1966, according to the Guinness Book of Records. So I felt, well, I should read. And he did not tell us easy, it's easy to be rich. No, he told us you're going to meet crisis, you're going to make mistakes. And if you have the time, read that book. It's still available on Amazon, How to Be Rich by Paul Getty. The thing is, recently, this pandemic has hit the world. And I don't think anyone has been spared, whether you're running a big business, a small business, or whether you're working. Recently, I spoke to some of my friends. They had no business for the last 3 months, and they can't even restart. Some of them are in the construction business, like I was for many, many years, handling air conditioning for small buildings and big buildings and homes. They wanted to start work, but all their workers are under quarantine. So they can't even start their construction projects. And so as a result, they have cash flow problems, they have goods that have to be paid for, and yet customers are not paying because there's no progress on the website, on the job site. So this is something that I think will be of interest. Crisis and setbacks, how to overcome them.
So Dad, thank you for joining us and for setting the stage about the challenges that people are going through. And I know with our friends on Zoom right now, I would also like to hear from you, right? So that with the technology, we can actually do polling. Yeah, so I'm going to launch a poll right now. So if you are close to your computer that you can actually answer the question, we would like to actually also have you be a little bit interactive with us. I know we have about 62 people here. I'm going to launch a poll, and if you get into your computer, we'd like to know what challenges are you facing now. Okay, it's a multiple choice, so you can pick as many as you want, and it's anonymous, so I don't know what you are facing, but there are questions in there like lower customer demand, higher customer demand, because some of my clients say actually they are in essential services, their demand is higher, but their staff cannot cope, right? Staff and talent not ready for changes. And you as a leader might be feeling very stressed at this time. I also know there are CEOs, people on the C-suite that is in this Zoom, and your challenge might be how to influence the board of directors. Okay. Also may cash flow problems, worry about the mental health of my staff. I will always bring mental health, because being a trained in psychology, I'm always concerned about how are people mentally, right? Okay, or you may need to lay off staff. Like you want to change your business model, but you might not be sure how to do it. Or you are a leader and you have new roles coming up, new team coming up, and there is much that you are still trying to grapple with. Okay, so with we've got 44% of people who have been voted. Another 10 seconds so that I can understand where you are and what you're facing. Just to know, those of you who are, if you could just make sure you mute yourself so there's also no disturbance in the background. Okay, so that can you see? 62 yes. People have voted, right? And then we will end the poll and launch it soon. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and see what 37, 38 of you are saying about the challenges that you are facing. Okay, and I'm going to share the results with you. And so let's have a look. Okay, so we can see the highest. So about 37% of the people who answered said that they feel stressed as a leader in this tough times. Yeah, and then the others was like changing their roles, things like staff and talent are not ready for changes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. So we have those. What's your response, Ed?
Well, I'm not surprised, because being a leader, you have to answer to so many things. And right now, there are many things that seem to be out of control and beyond your control. So one of the things that can happen is you start panicking and wondering what's happening. Well, I was quoting Paul Getty, and the first thing he said when you face a problem like that is don't panic. Don't panic. That's his first advice to anyone. So the first thing is to truly understand that panicking doesn't do anything good for anyone, because you'll then be unable to focus on the real problem at hand. You'll be stressed out, and that's where people like Wendy, being a psychologist, can come in and really help you understand the situation, distance yourself from the current situation and see if you can think more clearly. Prime Minister Lee just recently said, do not fear. He said, do not fear. Do not lose heart. Singapore will not falter. And then I remember what the Bible says, because as a Christian, I go back. When I had fear, what did I do? I remember in Isaiah, God says, do not fear. See, quotation by the Prime Minister was, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. As a believer, as a Christian, I definitely go to God and say, yes, please help me. I'm dismayed, I'm fearful, I'm panicking. Please help me, strengthen me, so that I will know what to do. And I claim the promise that I will be upheld again. So based on that, I then realized that stress is normal, as stated out. If you want to be a business leader, expect stress. There's no such thing as plain sailing. Sooner or later, you'll be facing that stress. And I have many stories of personal crisis, company crisis, my father's own crisis. I'll try and share them within the time we have.
So I'm going to share some slides, because those of you who may not know what we're doing, so today I've written 24 books on multiple intelligences, as well as on resilience. I've run my business for 17 years. I've got 3 kids in university. My dad is a grandfather to 9. At the current moment, he's the governor of Singapore Manufacturing Federation and to lots of businesses. And I would tell them how old you are, but I'll tell them how old I am, right? But what is interesting in terms of setback is that in 1999, both of us, Dad and me, we went through a very difficult time, because my dad was in a joint venture. It lost $2 million, right? And I actually then got retrenched, and I also became a single mom. So in those periods of time, it was really the stormiest.
Stressful.
It was very stormy.
Setbacks,
it was
obstacles, storms,
yeah,
thunder.
I know. But I remember one thing you said to me, right? You said, Wendy, money can be made back, but at least we are all healthy, and I even knew that, when I got a divorce, it was so unconventional. I was panicking a lot. But you also said to me, actually you went to the Bible, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, what does the Bible say? But you did say to me, Wendy, I will never really approve of a divorce, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. And I think if you think about the setbacks in life, I think when we go through a very difficult time, having someone say, with such unconditional love, that you may not understand my choice, or you may not at that time approve, but you love me, right? And I think for anyone who's going through a difficult time, turn to someone you trust, because you do need the psychology, we call it positive regard, unconditional positive regard. And if you are watching this and you know a friend who is maybe panicking because their business is not going well, or they're going through a personal setback that's impacting them, go to that person and say, I may not understand what you're going through, but you know what? I'm your friend. I'm here for you. And I care a lot about you. I love you for who you are. I think that's a very important message to tell people, right? Yeah. So, and then of course, if we go way back, right? In 1964, my grandfather also had a huge business setback, right? And Dad, would you like to share that about Akong?
My grandfather and my father were involved in what they call the barter trading business in Indonesia from after the war. And my father took over from my grandfather in the early 50s when my grandfather passed away. And my father continued this barter trading. Barter trading, some of you are not familiar with, because today we hardly do that. But in those days, the Indonesian islands around us here would send us rubber, would send us coconut, or copra as they call it, would send us seashells. And my father would bring them in and then sell them on the market here, get the cash, and then in return, send back to those islands, the real islands around here, things that they need, including food, clothing, medicine, household items, and so on. There was no cash transaction between the customer and my father's business. But in 1963, President Sukarno of Indonesia got very angry because Singapore joined Malaysia to become part of Malaysia. And he decided to confront Singapore with a confrontase, or confrontation. And overnight, my father's business collapsed completely because, first of all, no more shipping allowed between Indonesia and Singapore. Secondly, all his customers could not send anything out. So there was nothing for my father to sell and get back the money that the customers owe us for earlier shipments. So overnight, he lost his customers, he lost his business, he had lost a lot of cash, and the business had to fold up. It was just like the pandemic now, beyond his control. And it was then that I learned how resourceful my father was, because he did not panic. Instead, he took up some part-time job. He was the first one to go and work on Fuji elevators. Today, you see a lot of them in HDB flats. My father was the first salesman, just selling elevators for the Japanese, and they were new here. And then later, he started to sell envelopes for an Australian company, because he had 7 children, I being the eldest, in school, and I was abroad. So he was very resourceful. He started to work. And then that's when he started his home appliance business. He called it Chua Radio, named after our surname. And he went into that business. But he did not just go into open a shop. You know? He was very resourceful. He went and looked for developers who were developing housing for the British Army personnel, and sold them in bulk irons and fans and refrigerators and so on. So we started business. What I'm trying to say is, in life we will meet crises. In life there will be situations beyond our control, but how we can come back like a putaong.
This reminds me like I'm like the Sunday school teacher, then I'm like trying to like do this.
So if you are facing the challenges now and your business really has no way to go, one option is like my dad, change the business. And Peter Drucker used to say that opportunities, resources, everything exists outside. And to get results in business, you really have to exploit opportunities and not just try to solve problems. So right now, maybe you have to look for new opportunities, like my dad did. We went from a barter trading into something completely different. And of course, subsequently, he went into air conditioning with the Japanese.
So right now, what comes to my mind, Dad, and there might be people in the audience that are wondering, right? So if there were previous ups and downs, even in the family, what does that mean for our current generation, right? So I'm trained in family constellation and organization dynamics. And when I work with the leader, I actually ask also their stories of their fathers or their grandfathers, and if there were burdens and blessings and gifts that might be passed down from generation to generation, right? Because obviously in the past, I might not be conscious about it, but when I was being trained in organization dynamics and reflecting on myself, right, I also realized that when I went through a crisis or a change, the kind of belief system that was passed down in the words, in the stories, was about, you might get knocked down, but you get up again. So the putaong, that Chinese door where the door gets knocked down, but the door comes back out. I think it's these beliefs and mindset that was implanted. So those of you who are wondering, okay, are the past failures of my family and my generation gonna be a continued like curse, right? At the same time, reflect back and say, actually, in those stories, look for the gems, look for the strength and the resilience and the courage that you will also see in your father, mother, grandmother, grandfather, right? And actually take those strengths along with you into the current and the future success. So even as I say this, right, all of you might want to start thinking, okay, what is the strength and the value of your father, mother, uncle, someone in your life, or even like the Albert saying, a leader that you respect, right? The courage or the unique strength that person has, that pioneering spirit that person have. And I'd like you to write it into your notebook or somewhere else, your phone, to remember that these strengths are also for you to claim, right? For you to claim. And I want to then also honor who has come before us and honor the strength and what they have given you. Right. And I want to say that from that setback, my father and my grandfather then started Daikin. So those of you who have aircon, even if it's not Daikin right now, know that long time ago, they saw an opportunity. It was a brand that actually people didn't want in Singapore because of our history with Japan, right? But my grandfather took a risk. He took a risk. And I remember what my grandfather, he named me like a boy. He named me Kok Wan, Guo Wan. Country is gracious. I can see someone's very interested, Mr. Quack. Like, whoa, what's it interesting, right? So I was named Guo Wan. And my grandfather told me, you can do anything. Even a girl can serve the nation. There's no difference between a boy and a girl. I name you like a boy because you can serve the nation just as well as a boy. And I think that kind of message just sunk into me, that then, you know, there might be obstacles. I might become a single mom, you know, but I can still have strength to serve the nation, right? And so I want you to now reflect and say, you know, a gratitude prayer, or just being thankful for the strengths that has been passed on to you. So don't just focus on the weaknesses or the crisis at the moment, but actually look for the blessings that might actually be in those burdens. So the burdens that my father and my grandfather carried, there were also blessings of resilience, of courage, of risk-taking, you know, and the wisdom that that has been passed down. So even when I go through a business difficulty, my dad doesn't scold me, or, you know, he says, okay, you know, we can make it back again. We can move on. I think that's really important to share, right? Okay. So what I would like to then share is that there is a resilience to people, in terms of, this is my definition, okay? A resilient person bounces back from problems and leaps towards possibility. And I know that that would be something I see in you, I see in Akong, right? And not just leap forward, right? But through that setback, we actually grow wiser and more courageous. I mean, I realized that with my divorce, right? And of course, I remarried. But I also see that through career changes, crisis, you know, is this whole thing about looking at possibility, right? Yeah. And then it's about business resiliency, right? And, you know, McKinsey's Kevin Snyder in this article says that a business, you know, a resilient business is about ability to absorb a shock and come out of it better than the competition. And I think this is what we need to think about now too, right? Because it's not just about surviving. I mean, we need to survive, right? And figure out cash flow and all that. But it's also about planning for the long-term prosperity. You want to say something about that, Dad?
Okay. You know, we are in Singapore, and I think since our first Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, was running this country, he was always looking ahead. He was never looking at the problem today. He was looking ahead. Give you an example. I had the privilege of having lunch with him sometimes at Istana because I was heading the business group, Manufacturers Association, and he wanted to know more about business with India. But one day he asked me a question. He said, Robert, I'm very concerned. I said, what are you concerned about? He said, well, 5-10 years from now, we will be facing a new challenge. So I said, what do you mean, MM? No, Minister Mentor already at that time. He said, well, China and some of these countries in the region will become better, safer. They will create more opportunities in Singapore. What do you think will happen? Don't you think that some of our top talents will leave and not come back, or they go in search for better opportunities in China? Then we will be short of such talents to drive our country, to drive our businesses. What can we do to keep those talents here in Singapore? So he was thinking not tomorrow, but not just 5 years, but down the road. And of course, subsequently, I found that he tried to make Singapore a better place, a safer place, a place where people will be happy to bring up their children, good education, good security. And today, if you look back, you'll realize that we have taken all these now for granted. But at that time, he was very, very concerned. Because 3 weeks after that, I met one of these so-called top talents in Singapore. And he actually said, do you know, I'm waiting for my children to graduate, and then I'm going to move to China and do my business there. move to China, not just working. But subsequently, I'm glad this person, a good friend of mine, decided to stay back and continue to contribute to Singapore's progress and headed some of our largest corporations. So planning ahead. And what I'm trying to say is, when my father met with a setback, he did not say try and resume his old business, try to find ways. But instead he said, what are the new opportunities? And he went into new things. And subsequently, of course, by chance, he came across this commercial aircon business from Daikin, Japan. And at that time, we had no resources, very little money because he lost everything, no skill because he knew nothing about air conditioning. But he did not hesitate to send me and my younger brother all the way to Japan for 3 months and learn the trade right there in the factories in Japan. And there's a story here which my wife doesn't like me to tell because it reminds her that, we were not rich enough. We were so poor, but we were so in a hurry to learn new skill that at the end of our honeymoon in Japan, I stayed back for my training, and my wife came back alone. And for the next 3 months, I was a bachelor in Japan, working in the factory floor. But that was my father's determination. Go and learn something new that will help my new business.
So you started your marriage learning, huh? But it's okay, Harry came along.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, when you go into something new, you must be prepared to have new resources, new skills, new market, new knowledge. And those are things we can all learn. And that's what made my father so successful, because he was prepared to learn new things. He knew nothing about elevators, but he sold his first Fujitech to the housing board elevator out of no experience, but he was willing to learn.
So what I'm hearing that, and because some of the leaders that I coach, right, are sort of firefighting at this moment, and actually one of them shared with me that the tension is, the current operation, right? How to get things going, how to get the workers back, and all that, and at the same time needing to plan for the future, and so an advice I would ask is that even as we do the current operations and trying to find new markets, spend about 2 hours a week, right? 2 hours a week to visualize. So sit there and go, okay, what would the future be like? I mean, that's what I hear from your story about Lee Kuan Yew, right? That there's always a, focus on the current, like what we call in the dance, but always go up on the balcony, go look further, take time to also evaluate the future, what is possible in the future, and plan for those. So spending some time a week to do that might be a habit that resilient leaders can do.
Well, a good leader should not be just looking at the day-to-day thing. I was mentioning Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. He was always looking ahead. And he's like the rest of us, would make mistakes too, and he made his mistakes, but he was very fast to change. When we got out of Malaysia, he was very, very sad because he felt that we had no resources to really enable us to go on our own. But he had very good people like Dr. Goh Keng Swee and so on. Before long, we were industrializing, we were improving our education system, and so on. And therefore, we could get back. Those are good examples. But is it within our ability to do so? I think most leaders have that ability. And just have to focus those strengths of yourself and your organization into new directions. Like right now, the government has already announced they're going to change Singapore. We cannot resume to a normal. It will be a different normal. So even our businesses, I think we should expect to change, and don't expect the government to change you. I always say change. You changes by us.
So
government can facilitate.
So that the cycle, right? So the whole mindset thing. So it's so easy for people to say, come on, go learn a new skill, right? You got to upskill. There's all these skill, future, money, and all that. But really, when it comes down to it, the individual, the leaders, the staff, I mean, that's where I think in our poll, people resist change. People are afraid to change, or they are they have learning anxiety, right? So I think what we need to also address, and leaders, if you are listening in, please feel free to put questions down in the chat. Email and Rachel are monitoring it. But definitely a big question is the mindset, right? It's absolutely is the mindset. And my grandfather, I remember he saying, he's really the role model of 活到老学到老, right? I think I need that cut. Like I'm speaking Chinese now. 活到老学到老, right? And and also, so it doesn't matter how old you are, or young, but it's about, okay, if there's a new skill, even like doing this on Zoom, you that coming in, that's a different platform. How willing are you to take a risk, and maybe, it's not going to be perfect, right? So being able the resilient leader is one that will go, okay, I'm going to step into something a little unknown, very unfamiliar to me. I'm not going to perform in this new role or this new situation or with this new skill that I would be if a more familiar skill, right? But you know what? I'm going to go in and be okay that it's not perfect. That I'm going to fumble, but as long as I don't hurt anyone, I don't, I take sort of they call calculated risk, right? No, you're not going to hurt anyone. Then take that risk and be brave to do that, right? So it's in the mind.
That's right.
Right.
So, yeah. And talking about learning new things, it's up to you. There's nothing to stop us from learning new skills. And today we have so much support. My wife and I recently went online to learn about e-commerce, because we have always been running our business based on face-to-face. So we wanted to understand what's e-commerce. And I also remember I was trained as an electronics engineer in the 60s. But by the 70s, the microprocessor, the mini computer had come on stream, but I had very little idea about software programming. So one day I found myself enrolled into the NUS software programming class at night. And when I arrived, all my classmates were all young students, and I was probably the oldest, and I was already running a successful business. So the professor said, why are you here? You don't need to learn anything. You're already successful as a businessman. But I said, I want to understand how the computer is affecting. At that time, we were programming the IBM desktop and so on. But because I continue to learn, today I'm not unfamiliar with what computers can do, even for air conditioning, even for home appliances, because IoT is here. And if you don't understand IoT, how can you be at the forefront of technology? So we never stop learning.
Yeah, right. So here, right, if you want to learn new skill, right, then there is the waterline. Okay, if you can see my very, very basic iceberg in the waterline. So if you want to learn new skill, recognize that underneath the waterline, what might be hidden might be fear. But you can also embrace courage, and also a mindset that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to do something for the first time, and it's imperfect, right? And then we learn to get better at it, right? And I think that's something that as leaders you can share with your staff as well. That how did you grapple with something new, and what did you learn from it? I think we can definitely set a role model, right, of what learning is. Yeah. Okay. I mean, at this point, I would also like to share the one approach which I created when I was in RI. As some of you may know, I was the school psychologist of Raffles Institution, and people were curious, like, how did I take these high achievers and help them win competition? Or like I had some students there was one boy who had an injury, doing his sports, and then he came to me, and that to him is a setback, right? An injury. But he has a competition, and so he came to me to say, look, he wants to win the competition. So one is to ask yourself questions. Yeah. So it's very important that when you are in a situation, to ask yourself certain questions like what are the challenges? What are the challenges, right? So questions like where's your business now? Feel free to take a screenshot of this. Yeah. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? what are your resources? So like, my dad talked about looking at what you have, and resources are also humans, right? Your family, my dad's a resource, my network, my friends, my team are resources as well. What are your values and strengths as a leader? So put aside the challenge at the moment, the difficulties, and go deep inside yourself to say, hey, I've come through so far, so many ups and downs. What has those ups and downs shown about my strengths and my values? Is it integrity? Is it courage? Is it resilience? Is it being authentic? What is it about you? Also, what is the strength of your business and the strength of your team? So I'm very grateful for a team who is willing to jump in and do something different with me, to experiment, to literally think and do out of the box. What actions are you taking to engage and motivate your staff? So these are the what questions. And to achieve the business breakthroughs, what skills do you and your team need right now? So these are some examples of the one of when I take the W of the one approach into this situation right now. Okay. All right. Are you able to see the screen? Because I see somebody that says she can't see anything. It is blank. So are you able to see the screen? The PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Gareth. Okay. So back to the one approach, right? And then we look at actions and acknowledgement, because in order to get to our goal and to perform, we need to take actions, right? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about acknowledgement later, and then being neutral and non-judging. So as a coach, how am I practicing being neutral and non-judging? Also, as a leader, are you practicing being neutral and non-judging? Yeah. And then, of course, D is for individual differences. So looking at your team as individual different people, okay, with personality, strengths. Yep, strengths that you always talk about. Look for the strengths of your team individually. What are they good at doing? And really it's about making a difference as well. Okay, so I am going to pause here and just, and then Dad, you did talk about actions, right? First, pull back and evaluate, right? Go sort of spend some time pausing and looking at the situation. Don't panic, take deep breaths, right? Pray, talk to someone, but actually have a time of pausing and reflection. Yeah, you mentioned that. And then you talk about resources. What do you need? And marshal all resources. Can you talk a little bit about this one?
Okay, first thing about pulling back is sometimes you and your team may be so involved in trying to solve the so-called problem, the crisis, the firefighting, that you don't have a chance to really take another look at the overall picture. Maybe this business already has very little hope of recovery, not because you are not good enough, but because the circumstances are such. So you may want to say, look, whatever resources we have, whether it's people, knowledge, or even the money, whatever's left, what else can we do? So you have to pull back and look at it objectively. And that's where people like Wendy and consultants can be useful, because sometimes we don't see what they can see because they are very objective, whereas we become too immersed in our problems. So
and emotionally tied, and maybe the ego is tied.
In fact, I have a long list here of all the crises I've gone through, and I was telling Wendy we could share this for the next 10 hours.
Yeah, well, okay.
But what I'm trying to say is, the one thing I learned is you pull back. And I use mind maps for years now. I have thousands of mind maps where I then try and figure out. Of course, the one approach is also looking at action, acknowledging, pull back, looking at what's happening. And pullback is even recommended by Paul Getty, because then you can observe it objectively. But sometimes you also have to look at what's important and what's not. And that's where Wendy's talking about action. We'll continue with that.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the resources, right? And then you said marshal all resources: cerebral, financial, creative, and practical. So you're also looking at cerebral. So what is the cerebral resources that Getty and you talk about?
You see, that's mental. That's your knowledge area.
Okay.
But sometimes nobody knows everything. Nobody can say, I know everything. A lot of people now lack, it's not just intellect. They have the intellect, they are like intellectual people, very intelligent. But sometimes their EQ is a big problem. You know, you need help. And in business, you better build out a network before long. Network of people. You know, I have a network of university professors because I went to study in extracurricular courses in NUS. I joined the Stanford NUS program. So I knew a lot of professors, and they are resources you can tap. Buy them a lunch when they are free, and then you can also learn from them. Although we always say, oh, they are bookworms, yeah, but they have the opportunity to actually look at a wide spectrum of companies and consultants and psychologists like Wendy. They can look at it from another viewpoint, because if you want to change business, your main resource that you probably can keep will be your good people. But then they need to be convinced that, you know, they also have to change. They may have to use their strength in a different way. Just an example, I was trying to do contracts, projects in air conditioning, but we were losing a lot of money because our competitors were big boys from the UK, from the US, from Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan. Well, we were a small company, and they were prepared to lose money to get their first job. You know, and Singapore is open for all foreign contractors. So one day I had to study it carefully, and I went to my father, who was then chairman and MD. I said, look, I think we have to change our business model. Let's get out of contracting and try and be a major business in supplying our top-end commercial and industrial air conditioning to our competitors. My father thought I was mad, because how can you just stop a business and then do something completely different? And can your competitors trust you? But I said to my father, I said, look, we're going to change our business model, not overnight. Give ourselves 3 years. We will slowly give up contracting, and then I will make friends with all these so-called competitors through our association and try and convince them to use our equipment in their projects. And after a few years, we had 6 out of 10 competitors using our products instead of us, one of the 11 competitors. So our chances improved. And before we knew it, we were the biggest air conditioning company in Singapore. Not because we got the biggest contract, but a change in business model may be needed, or shift in your supply chain position, the moving back from the market and be a supplier rather than supplying directly to the developers and customers. So changing a business model, but I had to retrain my key resources, my key managers, look for their strength, put them in instead of handling a project, now they're handling dealers, consultants.
So we're looking at the talents, and also redeploying talents, retraining talents, and maybe sometimes some talents don't want to come on board and they need to go, right? So we'll get to a question there. But at this point, I would also like to ask the audience right now. It's like a test, okay? Going to see what you have picked up so far, okay? So if you could go to your chat, all right? And I hope to get at least 10 people responding to this, okay? What is one insight you have picked up so far from what we have shared, right? So this is a pause to just have you do a little bit of revision. And so if you could go to the chat for everyone to see, okay? If you're too shy, then you can send it directly, privately to me and my dad. But definitely, what is one insight you have picked up so far? And I'm going to give you 5 seconds to type it and enter. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so someone has sent to me privately. It's about look ahead, change business model. Just because I keep putting it up, okay, change business model. Okay, see that? So what people are saying here, right? Look ahead, be ready to change. Step back and be brave enough to change. Do not panic. Look at things on a higher level. Don't be afraid. Look for gems in every story. Take time to look ahead. Very good. So it looks
Oh,
like
good.
people are paying attention, right?
That's great.
It takes a village for a business to thrive. Thank you. Don't do it alone. That's true. You need your people. You know, for my 17 years of running One Inspiration, I have many mentors, Ruby, Karen, a lot of people who come my way and tap on, gave me advice, lend me clothes, okay, give me a lot of encouragement. Look at the strength of self and organization. Be adaptable, resilient, courage to be imperfect. Thank you. Right, making friends with competitors. That's true. Love yourself. Yeah, fight fire, take time. So thank you guys for contributing, because when you contribute, I think others could also be learning from your contribution as well. Reframe. Thank you, Janet. Look outside your industry, get fresh eyes, see new opportunities. Right. Okay. So I think I've got a private question coming to me about repositioning people. So Emin and Rachel, you won't be able to see this, so I'm going to read it out loud, but I'm not going to mention the name of the person. Some are more willing, I guess it's about the staff. Some staff are more willing and others are not so flexible, right? Need some guidance on how to evaluate people or repositioning. How much is it an attitude versus skills, or is it just a willingness to do anything? That would you like to comment on that?
In fact, I was sharing with Wendy on the need to reshuffle people. They shuffle the cabinet of government once in a while because they realize that certain people are good at other things. So in your company, if you're going to change a business model, it's also an opportunity for you to take a look. It depends on how close you have been working with your team. If you have been working with them day in, day out, like a CEO should, your main team, your immediate subordinates, what they can do well, what they're not good at, you probably know. And sometimes you say, oh, I would like Wendy, to head this department, but then she's not very good at numbers, so I don't know, but she's very good in convincing customers. But right now she's running the accounts department. I cannot imagine what I should do. But that's precisely what we should do. We should look at the strength of your main team, at least. Let's say you have 10 of them below you. Look at each one. What are they good at? Well, in my reorganizing from a contracting company to a supply company, one of the most important things was to try and convince consultants, architects, developers, to specify our products. And I found one guy, he was running our maintenance department for after sales. But I could see that his interaction with customers was very good, with dealers. So I said, I think I'm wasting him in that department. I pulled him up, made him a sales manager, sent him out to go and talk to these customers and actually take orders from the contractors and so on. As a result, he was much happier. He was more productive. He was bringing in millions of dollars in sales compared to the 2 million he was making in the maintenance department. So if you can recognize the strength of your people, use their strength. But you also have some reservations at times. But this guy, he likes to drink a lot. I don't know whether I can put him in a position like that. Well, you can coach him and say, don't drink so much, or you can help him overcome his weakness. But use his strength. So as a result of reshuffling, we were able to go into a new part of the supply chain and became very, very successful. In fact, without contracting, our business was better, cash flow better, we had a better reputation. So I think changing business model doesn't mean that you have to go into a completely new business. You may have to shift your own position, either forward, nearer to the customer, or backward. Of course, today people are trying to cut out the middleman through e-commerce and so on. Even that is an opportunity. Have you used e-commerce? Can your business use e-commerce so that you don't have to depend on the people who are not adding value? If we are in a value chain and we are not adding value to the end customer, we are just there to make some money because we are in intermediary, we don't have a future, because before long we will be eliminated. So think ahead.
I think what a question that a lot of people do ask me, right, tapping onto the psychology of change, how can people change? So I'm going to quickly then share the iceberg. So I was just drawing this on my iPad as my dad was talking, right? So I'm just going to show you what's on my iPad. So in an iceberg, right, what happens is that what you see, above the waterline, so that stuff might be not wanting to change, all right, and we're so easy to go and sort of label this person might be lazy, but actually if you look under what is hidden in that human being, right, 90% of the person, they may not show you, or you may not be able to, you're not aware of, the person may not even be aware of, but there are things like feelings, right? People are afraid, there's fears, right? So they might be afraid of rejection, fear of failure, right? So they're afraid of failure, they might be afraid of making mistakes, being scolded. There's some fears that go, oh, if I try something new, am I going to get scolded because I'm not doing it as well as the last thing, right? So, or they have thoughts like, I cannot do this. I don't think so there's maybe a lack of confidence, right? To do the new thing, to go into that new change. So what I'm hearing from my dad, and it's valid in a psychological sense, is look for the strength. So reminding someone that, hey, acknowledging that, you didn't know how to do that skill before. It took you 5 years. So you actually have that ability to learn. You have this thirst for knowledge. So being able to acknowledge and build the self-esteem of your staff is actually a very, very important first step. Yeah. Also look at the values, right? Because if the change is tied to a value, a purpose, it's easier for people to embrace that change, right? So if it's like for me, going online to teach and to share and to coach is something very new, right? I mean, I've been doing it, but maybe 10% of my business, but now it's 90% of my business, or maybe 100% of the time I'm online. But the change is tied to my value, my purpose of inspiring resilience. And so it's easier for me to go, okay, you know what, I might fail or make a mistake, but because I want to inspire resilience, I'm going to embrace this change. So I think looking a little bit deeper into the person's psyche, that person's mindset, could actually help that person out, help you to move into that new change, right? And then right at the bottom of the iceberg is our human needs. We all have needs, right? To survive. Yeah, we all have a need to belong. We all have needs for self-esteem, right? We want to know that what I'm doing is appreciated, is recognized, even my efforts are recognized. I might not be successful in the new skill, but at least I'm making the effort, and you, boss, is acknowledging my effort, right? And then we all have needs to be significant, right? The need to make a difference. We have need to show that we are also looking after the next generation. So right in the bottom of the iceberg, we all have needs. And if you're looking at a group of people, your team, you as a leader you have your iceberg, right? Your own fears, your own concerns, your own needs. You also have your values and your strengths. And then in an environment, you've had many, many icebergs. Right? In your company, you have many, many icebergs. So are you looking after everyone's iceberg? Of course, it's not your whole total burden to carry everyone's iceberg, but just for you to be aware that to build a resilient team, you got to be that resilient leader that pause and look inside yourself to go, what am I afraid of? Okay, what can I do to change? Who do I turn to? And then look at your team and help them with these resilient skills as well. What are they afraid of? What might be going on? What could enable them, give them the confidence to try something new? I think that's really important, right? And I think sometimes people could be as open to say, hey, boss, I'm not with this program, and then they might need to leave and maybe they'll be happier somewhere else. But I think sometimes the hard part of a boss and a leader is to let people go. So I'm going to pause here, and as you all reflect on your own iceberg, I'm going to ask my dad to tell a hire story, because he told it to me the other day, and I know that people are always curious about hire, right? The China, and how the big boss actually make that kind of a business model change, and how the employees and the leaders actually have to change the way they work.
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Okay, well, you're reflecting. Well, I've known Haya since the 1990s when I first went to China and worked in Qingdao with the Singapore government. But I came to know this company. At that time, Haya wasn't that big. It was growing, headquartered in Qingdao. But today, some of you may know, Haya now is the largest home appliance manufacturer in the world. 2016, they bought out GE Appliances for 5.6 billion US dollars, and in the last 4 years have transformed GE now into one of the top home appliance companies in the US. It was going downhill, but Haier changed it. And Haier could buy into GE, although it's a Chinese company buying into an American company, it wasn't quite welcome. But they had a different model of human resource development. Let me share with you. Some of you might have seen this TV program on CNA a few weeks ago, On the Brink, talking about how Haier changed. In 1992, GE wanted to buy out Haier so that they can have an entry into China. But Zhang Ruiming, the CEO and chairman, said, no, if we sell to you, that's the end of Haier. So they resisted, and then they continued to build themselves up in the rest of the world. But they also went into the US and started a factory in 1990 in South Carolina, in Camden. But after more than 20 years, Haier's market share in the US was only 2%. Very poor. And they were thinking of what to do. But they realized that in the US, you need a brand that the American people accept. And at about that time, in the 5-6 years ago, GE said, no, we should get out of this. This is not our cup of tea anymore. GE Appliances is 125 years old then, but it wasn't doing very well. So they wanted to sell, and Haier went in. But Haier said, I cannot bid for it because we cannot offer the highest price. But what attracted GE in the end was that in the meantime, Haier had changed its human resource model in China. What Zhang Ruiming did was he took the company of 60,000 employees. He had 80,000. He retrenched 10,000, 20,000 of them because they don't fit in with his new business model. And his new business model was to cut up the company into about 200 startup style of company, each with a leader and a team, given the responsibility to bring sales, develop products, run the finance, and the profit and loss. After a few years, he reported that out of 200 of his startups, 100 of them have been successful. And that's a very, very good ratio for startups, 50%. And he took that model and brought it to GE. And GE today is practicing this model. So his emphasis is entrepreneurship, because a lot of big companies like Haier, like that, are still very much top-down. But because China now has a lot of university graduates, more than 8 million a year, there's a lot of talent. But do these people just want to be doing a 9-to-5 job at the bottom? No. So things like that require drastic changes. And Haier has been at it now for more than 15 years and very successful. The Harvard professors, the Wharton professors have gone to Haier to study, even Gary Hammer and all these people. But what I'm trying to say is change can come from within as well. But it requires a leader that is determined, that believes in change, that believes that the future cannot be a continuity of what happened today. The age of discontinuity Drucker talked about is here. And today I think that's very significant. We better learn how to start new things, do new things in a new way.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about new ways and new things, I mean, I think there are leaders in here that, I want to also remind you is about being gentle with yourself, being neutral. And this is something that's really important in the one approach, is your way of being with yourself and others. I talk about the positive, the unconditional positive regard that I received from my dad when I was going through a divorce. And also when we go through setbacks or when we are in a crisis, how you are, right? So you might also have had setbacks before in the past, or you're going through one right now, is to learn to forgive and to learn from it. Not to get too hard on yourself. I think many leaders, you can't help but be so hard on yourself because you're all high achievers, right? And so sometimes when we face a bump, it's so be gentle with yourself, so that when your own stuff is facing an obstacle or a bump, they can come to you, right? And share and know that you have empathy, and you also have that tough love to guide them back on track and give them that kind of encouragement. So that's a really, really important way of being that I'd like to remind you to have. Because sometimes we might feel like, we want to blame ourselves or shame yourself, right? But being responsible is not about blaming self. Being responsible for your business success or your business mistake is to say, what did I do or not do? What would I do differently next time? And I think that's really important. It's from my latest book. So I'm actually giving PDF copies of my latest book, The One Way to Resilience. So if you fill up the feedback form later on, we can email you a PDF copy of that, right? And so blame and shame is going, oh, what's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me, right? And I want you to go away from that kind of blaming. It's also important that when you look at your staff and they're learning something new or they're feeling resistant to change, not to say what's wrong with this person, but maybe about, okay, what kind of support does this person need to at least give it a shot, give it a try, have an experiment with this. Yeah, so we want to really take away blame and shame from our business and our community. Another thing that I think I hear, and I put it into the slides here as well, that sometimes our choices will change with the different seasons in life, right? So even in this season where there's a lot of disruption and changes, be clear about what you want. You might want to scale up, you might want to scale down, and what are your non-negotiable needs are, right? So you might still say, even in this midst of all this disruption, I still need my quiet time. I still need time with my family. I still need time to be healthy, right? And then be bold in articulating them. If you have needs for support and mentoring, be bold about telling someone that, these are some of my needs as well, right? So these are some things I want to bring in from my book. And then finally, the D in the Wand approach is about making a difference. And, if you've gone through a setback in your life, just like I have many, and my dad, we want to be humble, right? We want to be humble, vulnerable, authentic, to say, actually, it's because of those setbacks that we can actually make a bigger difference to others. So imagine, right? Imagine 10 years or 15 years from now, right? And you have thrived through COVID-19, right? You survive and sort of bounce forward. You have a great story to tell the next generation, to say, hey, this is what I learned. You will also be a better mentor to your staff and to other people. And even in the midst of all these challenges right now, is what difference are you going to make? I think that's sort of the attitude. And here I'm going to do a little bit of the advertisement, right? So if you enjoy what you're listening and you will also want to leap forward, what I'll ask you that, feel free to let us know in the feedback form or even email to me what we can do for you, right? What one inspiration can do for you and your team. It could be about your own mindset that needs coaching to change, or your team or your leadership team, or even how do you engage your staff right now. So what we've been doing in this COVID-19 times, and for 17 years, for 17 years, we've been coaching people one-on-one. We've been teaching coaching skills to leaders, to SAF commanders. We do EQ and collaboration courses for healthcare, for banks, for financial institution, big companies, small companies. Thank you, Prime Structure, for allowing me to put a beautiful picture of you, because recently I did some group learning for their CEO and his 5 mentees, right, on how to leap forward, what are their strengths, how are they going to bounce forward from this COVID-19. We also have a talent in our team, Rachel and Emi, that does the talent work, coming in to look at, if you need to lay off people, what can we do to support them to find their strength and help them also to change their careers. The people that you leave behind, that you have back in your company, you need to re-energize, re-engage them, retrain them. We would help you to figure out what your talent gap is as well, and then coach them and empower them and help them find those strengths and those skills. Of course, we don't do like the technical things. We don't teach your people how to do programming, but definitely we help them to program what's in their mind, right? And I think that is something that I know that I'm gifted and I'm good at doing. Okay, so thank you so much, and the gratitude is also very important. I think my dad has always taught me, right, that no matter how bad it is, always give thanks. You know, always be grateful, because I think sometimes when we're in the midst of our troubles, we can be so in the pits, isn't it? Right? And then the problems get so big, and I get worried for people who really only think about the problems, because they might think there's no hope, right? I think when we pause and say, actually, you know what, I'm still grateful that I've got food on the table. I can go and get $3 chicken rice. I have my family to surround myself with. I think that helps me to go to sleep at night, and focusing on what I'm grateful for gives me that courage to wake up the next morning, right? So what do you think that of all that I've shared? What did you learn? What were some insights from your own daughter that you would like to share?
I'm always learning, Wendy. Now, the thing is, a lot of people never share their problems outside their own company, especially the CEO, thinking that, well, I'm the leader. No, I should not go around asking.
Yeah.
People might think, oh, what's this guy? He doesn't know how to run his business. But I'm the reverse. I mean, I had the big advantage of having been thrown into a network of business people, a network of government connection. And I'm not there just to take advantage of the network. I try to contribute towards a network. I was sharing with Wendy what happened way back in 1986 when we had our first national recession. And I was then with the Singapore Manufacturers Association. And our manufacturers bounced back very quickly after that. And we were then facing competition from the regional manufacturers, because our costs were escalating very fast. Our land costs, our labor costs, our operating costs. And our manufacturers were crying out for help. But all our government could do was say, increase your productivity, look for new market and so on. But then I had the opportunity to look at it differently, and I said, look, what is the difference we can make to help our manufacturers? And that was when I met the venture bazaars of Malaysia, and they were looking for investment. So in the end, we made a deal with several of the states, Johor, Malacca, Penang, and so on, to ask them to open up their industrial estates and their labor force to us. And for the next 10 years, we were able to bring 10,000 Singapore manufacturers to start another factory, not to leave Singapore, but to start their factories in Malaysia to take advantage of the lower costs and so on.
That's a very good example of collaboration, right? Even with your competition.
Yeah, and then in the end, what happened? Our companies benefited from the lower cost, and today they are making a lot of money because the ringgit is even lower, land cost is still very low, and operating cost is low. So that move wasn't done for my own company, but it was done because I believe we can make a difference and we can contribute even to our small little country. And I'm glad we could do that. But think of your company, how you can contribute not just to your company, but to the country, to the people. I look back, I'm very happy that we became the largest air conditioning company in Singapore, because we were supplying most of the housing board air conditioning with systems that I developed with the Japanese that were not seen in the 60s and 70s. And today I know that HDB owners now can enjoy a whole house air conditioning rather than just one bedroom when we started. So do try and think of how I can make a difference, not only to my company, but to the country and to our network. And build a network. CEOs, build your network, not just your friends for drinking and golfing. I play golf, I don't go. Yeah, but the thing is, build a network for you to learn, for you to toss ideas. And also, sometimes we can learn a lot from each other.
Okay. So as you prepare questions to ask, either on chat, or you can ask permission to be unmute and you can speak out. But if you want to use the chat, Emin and Rachel will be looking through the chat and consolidate some questions for us. We're going to have the next, say, 20 to 30 minutes for questions. But definitely want to reflect on what you said. So while you guys are writing, I'm going to sort of reflect on this as when you talk about not just for your own company, for the nation and for others. So you know, we've been running a lot of workshops for leaders within clients, right? So they call us. We actually do. I don't do a lot of marketing, but they call us, and we'll go in and we'll customize something for the companies. And then inevitably, a participant at times says, "Oh, I wish my mother would hear this, or my wife, or you know, my mother-in-law, or my best friend could learn about the Iceberg, learn about the coaching model." I mean, they would always say something like that, and they said, "Would you do anything public?" And I wasn't open to doing the public ones because there's a lot of organization involved. And so 10 years ago, I decided to host one live sessions in my own house, in my living room, right? That friends of friends can come and just learn, and we share openly. I will provide food and dinner so they can come have a bit of dinner and then sit around my living room, and then we share something that we would only have taught to our clients. Now with COVID-19, of course, no one can gather, you know, and now can only have 5, right? But then 2 weeks ago, we decided to go and use Zoom so that we can share it online. And to my amazement, that 253 people turned up for that Zoom, right? And then it went beyond Singapore, because now that it's online, I have friends and clients and friends of clients who can Zoom in from Turkey, from Latin America. You know, they stayed up late. You know, unfortunately, ones in Europe, they had to either wake up really early or watch the recording. But I also realized that by giving, right, we receive a lot as well. We receive a gratitude, and it's just great that if I've got all these knowledge and you've got all these experience, share it rather than just keep it to yourself, right? And also that with the COVID, it went from, oh, I can't travel overseas to do my work. I actually then now travel by virtual, you know, and have people join us. So I think it's actually looking for the blessing even in a very difficult time. Yeah. So right now, if you've got ready with your questions, by all means, put it into the chat. I think there was one private one about that. Have you had to lay off people, or when you were chairman and you sat on boards and they had to make that difficult decision to say, we've got to lay off people, right? And I know that in reality, we open up the newspaper and this company is cutting 10%, that company is cutting 15% of workforce. It's a very, very difficult time for leaders, you know? So what would you like to say to the leaders who are facing that kind of sort of that challenge, right?
Well, we always try to avoid laying off. But when a business folds up because it's not viable anymore, you know, whatever the reason, quite often it's some of my partnerships run by my partners didn't go well. So in the end, we had to close them down. And once we closed them down, like when you were sharing, we have no choice but to lay them off. But we try to be kind, do whatever we can, you know, to help them.
Oh, yeah.
Even look for new jobs, introduce
I
them.
remember, right, 1999, I was told to fire 120 teachers. And I was pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant, and I had the teachers crying and saying, Wendy, can you start something else? We'll join you, you know. And these are teachers I've hired, trained, you know, for 5 years. And I was pregnant myself, and I said, look, I don't even get maternity leave. You know, it was really, really painful. I cried with them. But what I did was I told competitors, I told people, I says, look, you know, we're closing. Would you like to hire my teachers? Because I've trained them so well. They're really, really good, right? And so actually within 2 weeks, they were all hired by competitors.
You just answered your
right? But of course, I didn't get a new job.
Yeah.
I know I had to really go back and really reflect on myself. And of course, I became the school psychologist of Raffles Institution after that. But it's tough. It's tough. And I think, you know, offering your staff that you really have to lay off, maybe even a workshop on at least helping them look at their skills, their strength, even how to write a resume, or even now, even you don't need a resume, but even, you know, if they don't need it, but even like maybe some strengths and skills in how to do a Zoom interview, an online interview, giving them, you know, I think it, you know, some of such sessions. And if you need that kind of sessions, please write to us, because I've done career coaching for 20 years, right? That it doesn't have to be an expensive gift, but I think how you treat the ones you have to leave, to let go, how you treat the ones you got to let go is going to tell the ones who are left in your company about how you you will take care of that, right? I think that's tough,
Yeah.
you know, and the well-being of the ones who have to go and the ones who are going, that you are retaining, is also very important. Their mental well-being, how are they feeling in a very, very difficult time?
But the thing to share with these people also, of course, is life will never be, especially today, a continuous upward move in one job that you take up after you left school until you retire. Very, very few jobs are like that today. And even the young ones don't want such a job, you know? They'll rather change job every few years, if not every few months. But the point I want to make is, it could be a blessing in disguise, because your business could be a business that's not going to climb, you know, with the changes going on. So they may have new opportunities, you know, to use their talent and elsewhere. If they are a good salesperson, you know, today he may be selling refrigerators, but tomorrow he could be selling computers.
Yeah.
You know, and I've known people like that. I was sharing about my father. When his business collapsed, he had no choice but to take up a job selling lifts. But at that time, that was because he had very good contact with
Okay, we got more questions then.
with one very big trading company, and they offered him a job. And at that time, when people were starting salary at $80, he was paid $1,000. So somehow he could get a job, and he didn't mind what kind of job. He had to learn new things and so on. But it shows that the situations are usually static, and we are the dynamic people who can change to suit.
I had a very good question. Emin, you want to unmute or collate the questions, or do you want me to read it out loud?
Yeah, sure. Just on the point of layoffs, perhaps to wrap up that point, because we did have a question from Juno as well. And Juno, please correct me if I'm wrong, but basically his question was, when you have to conduct a layoff or reduce headcount in response to a crisis, right? How do you make this determination, and how did you proceed? And if I'm reading it correctly, I think what Juno means is, he's asking how do you determine, which headcounts to lay off and how do you go about it? So I know we touched on it for a bit, but it feels like a bit of a more specific question from Juno there. So Juno, thanks for the question.
Well, the layoffs could be caused by reorganizing a company, or it could be if the company collapses.
Now COVID, a lot of companies
collapse, then they got no choice. They have to lay them off.
So which one do you choose?
Well,
how do you make that choice?
It's always tough, isn't it? Because there's the emotional part. But let's assume that you're going to reorganize the company. All right. If you're going to reorganize a company and you're going to move into a different trade, certain people that are already in your company can go into the new business. Those you can keep. But there are certain people who will not fit in at all. Those you may have to let them go. But there's also a change going on. Recently, Hire's big boss was sharing why he had to retrench 10,000. Because these 10,000 were middle management people who don't fit in with the new business model of starting entrepreneurship in the company, where somebody must be prepared to come out and lead. But there were quite a few people who said, no, I don't want to lead. And they don't fit in. They don't want to be part of a team, new entrepreneur team. They don't want to lead. And he said, no choice. Those are middle management who now have no relevance to the company. He had to let them go. So it all depends on your situation. But you change the model, definitely certain people will be affected. You have to let them go as best as you can.
So what I'm hearing is also when you've identified what the new business value is, right, a new business model is, and what the future would be for the company, then you got to identify the skills and the mindset needed for this new model, right? Is it digitization? Is it more direct selling? Is it, what is it, right? And then again, there's an attitude thing as well. Are they willing to change with the business? If they go, oh no, I think of those good old days, and if they're like always that negative, and there's nothing that, no matter how much encouragement you give, then that individual needs to face up to reality, right? Because I think what you're saying is it's tough, right? But at least maybe telling the staff that this is what the new new model we're moving
it
towards.
helps if you
right?
already have some plan and you
Yeah.
can share with them. Because if you share with them, then they understand, oh, I don't fit in. Oh, I don't want to fit in.
Yeah.
But one of the big things you always have to do is once you reorganize, a lot of training is needed. Training in new skills, training in new attitudes. If somebody's been sitting in the office all the time, suddenly you tell him that he has to go out. He needs some skills.
Yeah.
So people communicate.
We do a skill wheel matrix thing that with our clients, right?
Yeah.
Like what are the skills needed? How's their will level? Because you can have, very low will to learn, right? And so how do you then motivate the ones who have low will, right? So you've got to identify the skills and the will.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other questions, Eamon?
Yes. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, James is going to leave, so I will contact you, James, for your question about family business. Okay, so you got to, how can children balance? I respect you, right? Prophet, poor James. Okay, James, I'll give you
Anyway, this question is relevant. Before I started, my father called me back from my teaching job in Australia to come back and help him start his home appliance business because he needed some technical person. But I was very young then. I was only about 20 plus, and he was the boss. That's the end. But the thing is, I had to depend on his business experience. I couldn't do anything. But I found out that as an engineer, if I just apply engineering, I cannot run a business. So I had a very good mentor. He was the sponsor of the Dale Carnegie, who told me, he said, Robert, as an engineer, you cannot run a business if you don't know where is your money, where the money is, how to finance a company. Go and study accounting and finance. And I found myself in a night class in NUS learning about finance and accounting, But later, I was able to help my father, and slowly I could take over. Then he started to trust me more and more. And before long, he was taking holidays. So I was able to run the show. But I had to win his trust too. So children sometimes have a hard time because the parents don't know if they can trust their children.
Yeah, when I used to start my business, I was working from my father's dining table 17 years ago. And my parents were asking me, aren't you going to work? I said, I'm working. No, they didn't get the whole idea of working from home, but now they are working from home too, which also comes to a very good question. I think I see from Punit, if I pronounced it correctly. Sorry if I didn't, but he's asking, I observed that work from home has affected employees' concentration and focus a bit negatively. They tend to make more mistakes in their normal work execution now. How to inspire them positively to be focused and sincere in their work again? Leave right now to be better. Okay. So I know that working from home is tough, and so some of the work that we've been doing with leaders is how to engage the staff. Sometimes, because everything is quite on Zoom, right? So even being able to do online with video on sessions with staff is very crucial. You might also want to learn how to do one-on-one coaching. So for the staff that you're thinking are making some mistakes, do privately one-on-one, go through what were the goals set, what were the mistakes, what was going on, where did the person feel they didn't have the skill or the guidance to complete those tasks, right? And also, if there are any challenges from working from home, maybe they feel that they still have to look after their children or their parents, they have other things that are occupying their mind. You might want them to be able to share that with you and co-create those solutions with you. I've got friends who said they will work only at night after the children have gone to bed, but as long as they complete the work by the deadline, the bosses are okay. So bosses right now also need to relook at how you do your KPI. I've asked leaders to reset priorities, to reset how you evaluate performance, because in the past, you might be able to see your staff working and you go, oh yeah, he's coming, he's gone for the meeting, but now the visibility has reduced. So how do you know that your staff is doing, and your staff wants to know how you're evaluating them. So that is also a conversation. Something we can help you with is how do you evaluate your staff, review their performance, and also maximize the performance when you don't see them all the time, right? Also the inspiring, right? You want to breathe life into them. So I know I've got teams that are doing online team building, okay, and having fun. They're baking bread together, so they're doing things that are not about just work to energize themselves, right? Because in the past, you can go for team lunches. Right now, if you go for team lunch, you can do with 4 team members. How do you choose which 4 to go, right? So there are many constraints, but at the same time, be creative in how you can engage your staff using the different technology and also doing the one-on-ones. I hope that helps. Yeah. Is there any other questions, Emin, that you see? And before you all leave, please click onto the post-workshop feedback because give us your permission to contact you by email. We will send you a PDF copy of my book. Also, we're also asking that if you want us to contact you about coaching for yourself or your team or any of the other courses that we do run and any of the talent consulting we can help you with as well. Okay. So, other questions? Emin.
Yes, we have quite a few questions.
Okay.
I'll just do one more before I pass on to Rachel as well.
Okay.
So we had a comment from John, and he had mentioned that in a crisis, how a leader handles the crisis, it's critical. You can either encourage or discourage your team through your attitude and your resilience, right? So our follow-up question was, how can a leader manage his own change curve and emotions so that he can be encouraging and supportive to his team?
You want to start first, Dad?
Okay, I just want to quote what Paul Getty says at his point number 6 about overcoming crisis and so on. He said, once everything is ready, this is speaking to the leader, act confidently, purposefully, aggressively, and above all, enthusiastically. No hesitation. It is here that the determination, personality, and energy of the leader count the most. So the leader has hard work to do, not only in leading, but at the same time, he has to act confidently, purposefully, aggressively, enthusiastically. I also remember in Dale Carnegie, we always told, to always act enthusiastic and you be enthusiastic. So as a leader, your enthusiasm will permeate your organization. It is at this point that your strengths come in. And you can also at this time take the opportunity to develop your own strengths in leadership. I sent my senior managers at one time to the Dale Carnegie course. Everyone.
You now sent to my course. Why are you plugging for other
No,
people?
that was in the old days, before your course. No, the reason
I was a baby then.
The reason was I found that most managers could do their own work, but were very poor in communicating with their own people. And this is still a challenge for leaders today. Are you able to communicate well? If it's a skill you need to learn, contact Wendy.
Well, what I'm going to share on screen right now is that you can do your own reflection because as leaders, I always say to the CEOs, right? You are the chief emotion officer. How you deal with your anxiety, how you manage your own energy will infect the rest of the organization. Now, that does not mean that you suppress your anxiety and your fear and sweep it under the carpet because it's just going to explode, all right? But what it is to pause and talk to a trusted friend, talk to a coach. So you have your own therapy time. You can kind of sit on this couch, right? You have your own time where you process what's going on in your iceberg. Then you can also be authentic to share with your own team that you also have those anxieties, but you know what? You are going to also walk them into the fire, right? Together, right? So a leader, true leadership is when you are able, when people will follow you into the unknown when they have a choice not to, right? So you must have that I wouldn't even say it's charisma. It's that people will trust you. Your team is going to trust you to walk into the unknown with you. And then you as the leader need to do the self-work. Go and reflect on your own strengths, right? So then you become confident again. The leadership role biography is about your own leadership throughout the years. And from that kind of an exercise, go back, be re-energized, be reinforced with your values and your purpose. And even if there's burdens that you've been carrying all your life, how do you let go of that burden, right? And then reflect on your values. Because as a leader, when you know your values and you know your purpose, you're also able to share that with your team and then lead them into the unknown. Yeah. So I hope that helps with John. Okay. Another one, Emin or Rachel?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Wendy, for that, because as you're sharing that, what come to my mind is also like in the first poll that you gave, one of the highest results from the audience was that, you know, stress as a leader during this tough time, that's one of the key struggles that they are facing and encountering right now. So in that lenses, like how can a leader manage their own stress so that they will come across as being positive and supportive? And I guess you can summarize this into like 2 or 3 bullet points, and this can be like the gifts or the key takeaways, you know, for people to leave from today's seminar.
So firstly, you define your task, right? So sometimes a big task, you need to chunk it to different smaller tasks, okay? Right? Okay. And then also remember, so if you redefine the task, you might be able to breathe a bit better. It goes, okay, it's not about changing the whole business model, but maybe I need to go find new customers. So that could be one task, right? So breaking it down into smaller tasks. The other one is, I think my dad talked about the ability. What skills do you need? Where do you need to learn it? Who can mentor you? What book can you read? What videos can you read? So to the skills. And then very importantly is your own perception. So your self-confidence, right? So go and talk to friends. I've asked people to go and talk to their other stakeholders and literally ask, can you tell me the strength you see in me? I really need it now. You know, I'm going through a very difficult time. Tell me what goodness do you see in me? And that itself can also help you remember your own confidence. I hope that helps. Because that stress definition I learned in 1990 as a young psychology student, and it still stays with me. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Wendy. So do you personally have a mantra or motto that reminders that you remind for yourself, you know, like whenever you're feeling stressed and when you are like, you know, just not in your tip-top condition like you are now?
Well, you know, even like 2 days ago, I received some not so nice news, right? And I know there'll be a financial impact on the business. I took time to breathe and pray and went for a walk. So I think just walking away, literally walking away from the problem for a bit. And I know when I was walking, I was actually having tears in my eyes, like going, okay, how am I going to deal with this new challenge, right? Crisis. Read this with the E, right? That can't spell. Okay. And then I actually went and asked for help, right? I'll ask for support. Because I then decided to walk all the way to my parents' house, you know, just to have dinner with them. And also in the midst of the watching Korean drama, I told them what was going through and then asking them to pray for me. And also I wrote to other people for advice. So I asked for advice, right? I shared it with my team, right? Because, you know, sometimes a problem shared and a problem halved. It's not like they can kind of help me with it, but I think then they actually know that in my mind, there's some distraction, but I'm going to put it aside, and they, you know, and it actually bonds the team together when I'm more vulnerable. So I don't know if it's a mantra, but it's more about some of the things that I actually practice, right? I spend time by myself, I ask for support, I share, you know, and then I wait. Okay, right? Yeah.
Good, thank you. Just kind of linking this, what you said, right? Like the first point, you breathe and then you pray and you go for a walk. It sounds like you are giving yourself the pause to be able to just, you know, take a step back and, like, you know, what Uncle Robert said just now from Paul Getty's stuff. So there was actually a question that I want to raise because this was also what, you know, you have shared. How has your faith, how has your personal faith helped you to be so resilient and you know, and being a leader who moves people with your heart? Can you share with us the values that you stand for?
This one ask me or ask my dad?
I think both of you are really
okay, first. I think.
You know, faith in the mighty God is very important, because then you know that you are not in charge. He is in charge. And you really trust Him to help you. You know, earlier I read from the Bible from Isaiah, I will strengthen you and help you. That's the promise of a mighty God. we don't have the resources or the strength to be able to help others or ourselves the way he can. But do you trust him? But when you trust him, you find like a big stone has been taken off your chest. You can breathe better. You'll be able to think better. You have more oxygen in your brain. And that is actually faith itself working to enable you to breathe better, to enable you to think better. And then if you are able to also distance yourself from the problem at the moment and start looking at things objectively. I use a mind map and I don't care. I just put in all the situation that I'm in, every single thing that's happening. And then later I can come back to this map again and say, look, it's been broken down now. And actually there's only one problem and there are so many possibilities. Let's tackle that. Let's concentrate. Concentration on a problem, concentrating resources into a problem is one way of solving it, and not one person trying to solve all the problems. That's Drucker.
Yeah, I think definitely, as my dad was sharing, it comes back to the making a difference, right? And I know that even when I was going through my own trials, personal and also business-wise, my dad would remind me, don't ask God why me. Don't go into the pity party, the God don't like me or mine must be bad. Don't even go there. Actually, the question to ask is, God, what do you want me to learn from this, right? And how do I serve God and how do I serve others because of this trial, right? So I know that being a single mom was not something I grew up wanting to be, but even when I became a single mom, I learned a lot about compassion and empathy, and I learned about resilience. Only going through starting a business during SARS, also, I learned about being prudent with cash, making sure we don't even have a swanky office. Working from home is okay. I learned humility. I learned I took the time to write Break to Dawn instead of wallowing in no business. And then, because it's like, how do I serve God and others because I'm going through something difficult, right? And I think that gives me that resilience. That even now, rather than lamenting that my income is going to be impacted because I can't travel to serve my clients overseas, is that how can I use this time in Singapore to help Singaporeans and people here, the youth with mental health, companies, businesses. So I think, that's sort of my how faith and values help me.
Okay. I think there's still some more questions, but
Yes.
I'm just looking at time. I mean, like, do we want to keep going until people just say it's enough, or?
Yeah. So I think at this point, maybe we can say an official bye-bye, and then if anybody just wants to stay on, and I guess Harry, or we can unmute you just if you're like my dad's friend, you want to say hi, it's like, okay. So please, if you can help us before you log off to complete the feedback form that Rina has just reposted. It really helps us to stay in touch, send you my book if you want it. And also that if there's any way we can help you and your company to bounce forward to this, please contact us. We are not that expensive, okay? So, and we'll find a way to be able to help you. We also do quite a lot of work with charities in Singapore, because we know that there are groups that may have a different type of budget. So don't hesitate to ask for help and support, because it's definitely something that we are teaching about, is to be able to ask for support, right? So thank you very much for being with us, and we hope to see you at another time. We're definitely going to do a one live session just on coaching, just to teach leaders what is coaching all about. And I think another one that we want to do is for parents, because some of you also talk about work from home, that parents might also be wondering what to do with the issues that they're now discovering that's at home, right? So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll still be around for another 10 minutes or so. So thank you also for the one team, yay! For being with us, for staying present, and also contributing and giving their time on this Saturday, okay?
All the best.
So all the best to
Thanks
all
for
of you.
joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this session, and we can have another opportunity in the future. God bless you.